obviously are extremely concerned at the rising cost of data, because this has a huge bearing on people's ability to communicate, receive, access information and free expression, especially during this COVID-19 period where people generally can't gather physically, and so there's a lot of online activity and an online assembly. We're extremely concerned at this rising cost. And we can see that the key problem here is the economic context in which we find ourselves. For starters, 69% of Zimbabweans live in extreme poverty, which means that the cost of the internet has become almost unaffordable to most people. Children are having to study online because schools are closed, and so there's a huge bearing on the right to access quality and affordable education if people cannot afford data. We look at the economic context, the hyperinflation, the arbitrage around the cost of accessing foreign currency, the cost of infrastructure. All of this comes down to poor economic management, and the Afrobarometer report was very clear in this regard that most Zimbabweans, 72% I believe that the country is going in the wrong direction because the economy is just poorly managed, and this is just but a symptom of it. And you see similar economic problems around the rising cost of Zupco fares, the rising cost of electricity tariffs, the rising cost of fuel. So, the rising cost of data must be considered in that same context. The rising cost of data does have huge implications for freedom of expression, the right, as I said, to access information, to express ideas, to communicate those ideas as set out in Section 61 of our Constitution. There are a lot of creatives and content creators who use the internet to fund their work, and if data costs are unaffordable, they'll be it'll be extremely difficult to create the content, but it'll also be very difficult for that content to reach consumers and for people to be able to access it. So, the UN was absolutely correct in its finding or its declaration that the access to affordable internet services is a basic fundamental right, because in this economy, in this context, in this post-COVID-19 era, it's impossible to survive without the ability to access information on your phone, on your laptop, on your computer. We all need that because that is the new normal we're operating in. Responsibility to fix the rising cost of the internet, which is a function of the rising cost of living, rests squarely with Mr. Mnangagwa's regime. They failed to implement currency measures, a monetary policy, and an economic context where businesses can do business in a rational way. And so we see, even the hyperinflation that we currently experience. I think inflation is currently at 162%. We can see that this is obviously going to lead to a rising cost of living, and especially in rural areas where, poor people barely have enough money to put food on the table, enough money to send their kids to school. I mean, accessing the internet at this exponential cost in the context of hyperinflation will be impossible. And it all comes down to poor economic management, an inability by the authorities to deal with economic fundamentals, the corruption and the looting that we see every single day, the failure, by the state to create an environment where big, medium, small business alike can operate in a manner that allows them to come up with cost structures that are consumer friendly. If content creators, if creatives generally, if journalists, cannot do their work because the cost of data and the cost of the internet is so high, and together with the general, economic problems, the rising cost of every single other input, then we're going to have big problems. Then it will fall upon the international media, international content creators to tell our stories, and that unique Zimbabwean voice, that authentic Zimbabwean voice will be lost. And a lot of content creators were doing absolutely fantastic work in the online space to try and push the needle, drive conversation, even entertainment. Our artists, who now have to, often resort to pay-to-view, concerts and that sort of thing. All of them will be affected because the cost of just downloading something or streaming is going to be so expensive. So, the impact of this poor economic mismanagement, 162% hyperinflation, the impact of, poor currency measures where, you've got huge distortions in the ability to access foreign currency. All of that has got this negative ripple effect. And the latest symptom of it is the rise in data costs.